In her exploration in the inner countries, Savitri has come to a place where life is governed by mind, by reason. A temperate, vigilant spirit governed life. Its acts were tools of the considering thought, too cold to take fire and set the world ablaze, or the careful reasons, diplomatic moves, testing the means to a prefigured end. Or at the highest pitch, some calm will's plan, or a strategy of some high command within to conquer the secret treasures of the gods, or win for a masked king some glorious world. Not a reflex of the spontaneous self, an index of the being and its moods, a winging of conscious spirit, a sacrament of life's communion with the still supreme, or its pure movement on the eternal's road. Or else, for the body of some high idea, a house was built with two close-fitting bricks. Action and thought cemented made a wall of small ideals lifting the soul. Even meditation mused on a narrow seat, and worship turned to an exclusive God, to the universal in a chapel prayed, whose doors were shut against the universe, or kneeled to the bodiless, impersonal, a mind shut to the cry and fire of love. A rational religion dried the heart. It planned a smooth life's acts with ethics rule, or offered a cold and flameless sacrifice. The sacred book lay on its sanctified desk, wrapped in interpretation's silken strings. A credo sealed up its spiritual sense. In the first part of this canto, what Savitri experiences is different aspects of the life self. First of all, there was all this urge of the senses, longing for bliss in revolt against the control of the mind. And then there was this giant head of life, like a flood, all the life impulses. Perhaps this relates to different chakras, I'm not sure. But anyway, now life is not like that. Now life is under the control of mind. Perhaps we can say this is a kind of sattvic state of the life, rather than a rajasic state. It has its points. Life is not reckless. It's not focusing entirely on the sense impressions. but it's limited. What he shows us is quite a limited picture. When life is not allowed its full free reign and development, it's tightly held under the control of mind. So there, life is ruled by a temperate, moderate, and watchful, vigilant spirit. There's something on watch that life doesn't do anything too unruly. That this temperate, vigilant spirit is governing, controlling life. And the acts of that life and that spirit were tools. They are used by the considering thought. It's the life under the control of the reasoning mind, the considering thought. So something's missing, no? That considering thought is all very well, but it's too cold to take fire and set the world ablaze. To really get a fire going, you need some vital enthusiasm and strength. Or its acts were diplomatic moves. A diplomat also, he can't act spontaneously. He has to always think about what will be the effect of his actions. And he always has a purpose in mind. So he has to think about that, no? So the careful reasons, diplomatic moves, testing, it tries out this thing, will this work? Testing the means to a prefigured end. The reason has an aim, a purpose in mind. It's already fixed what it wants to achieve. So can I achieve it this way? Can I achieve it that way? No? There's nothing spontaneous about it. He says at the highest pitch, at the highest level, the acts might be part of a plan, of some calm will, that it's been decided with an aim and an aspiration in view. Or it might be a strategy of some high command within, somewhere higher level of the mind. There's an aim and a purpose, and then there's a strategy, ways of achieving that. What it wants to do, that high command, must be a spiritualized mind. It wants to conquer the secret treasures of the gods. And to do that, there's a control of the vital, there's a careful, considered plan of self-discipline, how to go about it. Or maybe the plan is to win for a masked king some glorious world. Perhaps there's even some ambition there, that there's the king within, whether it is the true king or maybe some ambition. So all these things are not a reflex, not a reflection, not a spontaneous expression of the spontaneous self. Our psychic being, our soul, expresses itself spontaneously if it's allowed to. So there's always something very fresh and young. It's what I liked very much in some of my dear brothers and sisters in the ashram who had been with the mother for many years. Even when they were in their 80s, they were still so spontaneous and childlike and free and simple because they're living from the soul. So not a reflex of the spontaneous self, not an index of the being and its moods. An index is an indication. So certain actions really indicate the true being and what it is really feeling. And then this next line also, there's a knot, a winging of conscious spirit. If the life being is under the control of mind, it can't wing, it can't fly freely the way that the conscious spirit does. And it's not a sacrament. A sacrament is a sacred ritual, a sacrament of life's communion with the Supreme. That's what life should be, really, isn't it? That everything we do is some kind of consecrated expression of our communication, our oneness with the Lord. That would be wonderful. Or it's pure movement, the pure movement of life moving towards the eternal. So this is what happens. And at the worst, a house was built. There's some mental conception, and it uses bricks very closely fitted together. There's no little gaps and nooks and crannies. Action and thought cemented a wall of small ideals limiting the mind. Some Sattvic people are like that. No? They know exactly the way everything has to be done. Yeah. But this is small ideals limiting the soul. So even meditation, it's on a narrow seat, restricted, and worship turned to an exclusive God. There's a very narrow idea, what is the divine, even if that impulse of worship is a true impulse. The deity is very narrow. Some people, they pray to the universal being, universal deity. But if they choose to do it in such a tiny little chapel, a chapel is not a cathedral, it's a small church, no? And they keep the doors closed. The doors were shut against the universe. They pray to the universal, but they keep the doors and windows closed. Or what may happen is that a mind worships the idea of an impersonal God who doesn't have a form. It's supposed to be a very pure kind of religion, where you don't imagine a form or a name. You just worship the impersonal. But he says this might be happening in a mind which is completely shut to the cry and fire of love, the intensity and richness of emotion. In this case, a rational religion dried up the heart. It's too rational. And Sri Aurobindo says these rational religions, they can't last because there's no life in them. So this rational religion planned a smooth life's acts, everything in order, no ups and downs, ruled by ethics, which are human mental ideas of what is right and correct. Very, very useful to us at a certain time in our development, but it can be a bit dry and mental. No? Or there's some kind of sacrifice being offered, but it's got no fire, it's cold and flameless. And what tends to happen then is that we have our sacred book, our Shastra, which tells the truth, but we don't allow it any living truth. It lies there on its special desk and it's all tied up, wrapped up with beautiful silken decorations. You know? But the spiritual meaning of what is inside has been expressed into a credo, a creed, a dogma, a teaching, which everybody has to accept. It's wrapped up in these silken strings of interpretation. It's something of a danger in what I do. I'm explaining to you people some kind of surface meaning of these lines. And now we put it in films, and even we're putting it in a book. There's a danger that people will be saying, but Shraddhavan said, you know, instead of finding out for themselves really what is the spiritual sense of the word. So I'm aware of that danger. I hope all of you are aware of that danger, and that you will just use what I'm doing now as a kind of stepping stone to your own deep understanding of these marvelous words. Because what we can bring out in the class is very, very superficial, really. Yes, you like to start, Bhavan? Yeah.
Here was the quiet country of fixed mind. Here life no more was on, nor passions fall. The cry of sense had sunk into a hush.
Go on 2 more lines.
Soul was not there, nor spirit, but mind alone. Mind claimed to be the spirit and the soul.
So this is the level she's come to now, which is really dominated by mind. It's a quiet country, but there's something fixed about it. So it's not life who's ruling, with passion's voice, with the intensity. And that what she experienced at the beginning of the canto, the cry of the senses, this had become very quiet, sunk into a hush. Soul was not there, nor spirit, only mind. Mind claimed to be the spirit and the soul. This can happen. Elena?
The spirit soul itself as form of mind lost itself in the glory of the thought, a light that made invisible the sun.
So it's even the self-view of the spirit. It sees itself as a form of mind. And it identifies itself with mind, so it loses itself in all these glorious thoughts. And what the trouble with these glorious thoughts, the brilliance of the mind so clever and ingenious, and it can make such wonderful thought forms and put them into such wonderful words, no? But that light makes the sun invisible, the sun which is the real source of truth and pure energy.
Into a calm and settled space she came. The all was still, and all things kept their place. Each found what it had sought, and knew its aim, all at a final last stability.
So there's something very fixed about this mind. The mind has all the answers. Got everything organized very nicely, a firm and settled space. Everything's quiet, everything keeps its place. Each thing, each idea, thought, being found what it had been seeking for and felt fulfilled. It knows what it had been aiming for. There's a feeling of finality. Everything there had a final, last stability. It's found, so there's no more seeking. It's all understood and known, everything in its place. Gumsun.
There once stood those who bore authority on important role and had a law. Command was incarnate in his gesture and tone. Traditions petrified wisdom, how to his speech. His sentences
Savored, yes,
savored the oracle.
Yes. So there she sees a being. A being in a form something like a human being. He stands out and he meets her. He stood forth, he came forward. And he's a very authoritative figure. You can see that from the way, from his brow, his forehead. And he holds a rod. A rod is a sign of authority. Command was incarnate in his gesture and his tone. So what is his authority based on? His speech is shaped and molded by tradition's petrified wisdom, the wisdom of the ages, which is not living but turned to stone. Petrified means turned to stone. Here in Tamil Nadu, there are petrified forests. No? And near my mother's home in England, there was a river where people used to put in things, baby shoes or some kind of little souvenirs, and leave them there for a few days, and then they have turned to stone. There was so much calcium in the water. Petrified. So there's something, again, it's this idea of being fixed and unchanging. And what he spoke savored the oracle. He's speaking with such authority. This is a divine message that he's giving. Savored. I think here it means had the flavor of. Savor is flavor, and as a verb it can mean that we enjoy the flavor of something. You savor somebody's nice cooking, you know. But here I think it's the other way round, that the taste or the flavor of his words was like an oracle, a divine message that has come through some kind of sacred messenger. So what does he say, Joel?
Traveler or pilgrim of the inner world, fortunate are those who reach our brilliant air, flaming with thought's supreme humanity, or aspirant to the perfect way of life, here find it, rest from search and live in peace. Ours is the home of cosmic certainty. Here is the truth. God's harmony is here.
Yes, so this is what he's telling her. Whatever you were looking for, now you found it. You are very fortunate. You're a traveler or you're a pilgrim in this inner world, and you're very fortunate to have reached our brilliant air. Here you are. You've come to this clear, wonderful air which is burning with the supreme finality of thought. All has been worked out and thought out here. He says, you are an aspirant to the perfect way of life. Here you find it. So you don't have to search any further. You can stay with us, live at peace. Here everything is perfect. This, where we live, he says, this world is the home of cosmic certainty. of universal certainty. Here we are sure about everything. No? Here is the truth. God's harmony is here. I'm remembering a poem by the Polish Nobel laureate for literature, Wanda Szymborska. She wrote a poem about an island, the island of truth. It was like this, truth, where everything is fixed. But she said it's interesting, the only footsteps you see are all leading away from this place. Nobody wants to stay there because it's too fixed. I don't know. So, but he says, this is it, stay here. Here you found everything. Suresh.
It is the name in the book of the day, articulated by the sanction of the few. Adopt the expression of knowledge they post in mind. The ticket of order draw in lights blue, and praise the fact that made the one of our all here
Docketed.
and that the mind can know. All schemed by law that God permits to life. This is the end, and there is no beyond.
This is it. And it's a bit like a government office, isn't it? To register your name in the book of the elite, the chosen ones. You've been accepted. The few, the selected ones have said yes to you, like going to the entry service. So you can, now you're allowed in, you can take up your position here, your station of knowledge, your post, your special government post in mind. And you can get your ticket. I suppose it entitles you to certain privileges and food and all the rest. In the office of life, there's an office where you can get that. And praise thy fate. You have to express that you are pleased and happy. The fate that made you one of ours, that you could come here and become one of us. But here it really is like a government office. Everything's tied up in files with labels, docketed. Everything that the mind can know. It's tied up with red tape, there's a label, this is this. And everything that God allows life to do, that's also set out. There's a scheme for that. This is the end, and there is no beyond. This is as far as anybody can go. Here we've got everything perfectly arranged.
Here is the safety of the ultimate God. Here is the clarity of the sword of life. Here is the victory of single truth. Here burns the diamonds of flawless bliss. The favor of heaven and nature lies.
Live. Yeah. Yes. He's inviting her to live here. You're one of the favored few, one of the elite, a favorite of heaven and nature. Here it's safe, the safety of the ultimate wall. Here's the clarity. Everything is clear, there's no mystery or confusion. The clarity of the sword of light. Here is the victory of a single truth. That's the trouble with it. Here burns the diamond, the hard, bright, shining gemstone of flawless bliss, bliss without any shadow, stain. Come and live with us as a favorite of heaven and nature. So what does Savitri say? The sword of light. Yes, I think we speak about the sword of discernment that decides what is right and what is wrong. No? There's a clear light, it shows this is acceptable, this is not, something like that.
This is not the higher light or the higher truth, because it's a single
A single truth, yes. Yeah. So it's something actually very limited. This is fixed mind, but it's very self-satisfied and sure of itself. And yeah. So, what does Savitri say? Yes, Dhanalakshmi.
But to the true satisfied and confident state, Savitri replied, casting into his world, sight's deep relief, the heart's questioning inner voice. For here the heart spoke not, only clear daylight of intellect reigned here, limited, cold, precise.
So Savitri replies, we'll read what she says, but this is a sage, this is a wise man, but he's too satisfied, too confident. No? And in her answer, Savitri throws something into his world. We'll see what it is. She throws in the deep release of sight, of directly seeing something, not just of experience, not just learning with the intellect. No? And she throws the heart's questioning inner voice. Is this it? Is this really it, what I'm looking for? No. In that world, the heart doesn't have anything to say. It's only the intellect. Clear daylight. No? But that's very limiting. It's precise. It's cold. It can't satisfy the heart, which always wants warmth and movement and freedom. So this is what she says to him. Happy are they who in this chaos of things, this coming and going of the feet of time, can find the single truth, the eternal law. Untouched they live by hope and doubt and fear. Happy are men anchored on fixed belief in this uncertain and ambiguous world, or who have planted in the heart's rich soil one small grain of spiritual certitude. Happiest who stand on faith as on a rock. But I must pass, leaving the ended search, truth's rounded outcome, firm, immutable, and this harmonic building of world fact, this ordered knowledge of apparent things. Here I can stay not, for I seek my soul. Mother tells us a story. She said when she was growing up, when she was in her teens, they lived in a block of flats of some kind. And she said just nearby there was a family of Catholic believers. And she was friendly, I think, with the daughters of that family. And she said, I thought how fortunate they are. They have this fixed belief. They know, they understand everything. There's no fear and hope and doubt or anything like that. They just know how things are. So, but that's too limiting. You have to leave that state if you want to find your soul, because there's more mystery to the world than these mental formulations. But she always tells the truth. She says, happy are those people in this chaos, this confusion of things, and the way that things come and go in the feet of time. Things come and then they go again, and then they come again and go again. If you can find something that seems to you like the single truth and the eternal law that gives you a lot of certitude in your life, you can live untouched, unaffected by hope and doubt and fear. People who are anchored like a ship, it puts down its anchor, then it can't drift too far. Who are anchored on fixed belief. That's a wonderful anchor in this uncertain and ambiguous world. And she says, happy those who have planted in the rich, fertile soil of the heart just one small grain of spiritual certitude. What a blessing that is. And most happy are those who have a firm faith, and they can stand on that firm faith like a rock. But she says, now I have to move on. You people have certitude, you've got everything fixed and organized, but I can't stay here because I have to go on. Here you have an ended search, but I haven't ended my search yet, she says. You've discovered truths, rounded outcome. I suppose a sphere is the perfect form, no? Fixed, immutable, it's not going to change. And then you've built up this world of yours, this harmonic building of world fact, everything balanced and in its place. And all this ordered knowledge of apparent things, each thing in its place. But I can't stay here because I have to find my soul. That's the command that she's been given. So we will stop there for today. Do you want to read these lines? Yeah?
A temperate, vigilant spirit governed life. Its acts were tools of the considering thought, too cold to take fire and set the world ablaze. Or the careful reason's diplomatic moves, testing the means to a prefigured end. Or at the highest pitch, some calm will's plan, or a strategy of some high command within to conquer the secret treasures of the gods, or win for a masked king some glorious world. Not a reflex of the spontaneous self, an index of the being and its moods, a winging of conscious spirit, a sacrament of life's communion with the still supreme, or its pure movement on the Eternal's road. Or else for the body of some high idea, a house was built with 2 close-fitting bricks. Action and thought cemented made a wall of small ideals, limiting the soul. Even meditation mused on a narrow seat, and worship turned to an exclusive God, to the universal in a chapel prayed whose doors were shut against the universe, or kneeled to the bodiless, impersonal, a mind shut to the cry and fire of love. A rational religion dried the heart. It planned a smooth life's acts with ethics rule, or offered a cold and flameless sacrifice. The sacred book lay on its sanctified desk, wrapped in interpretation's silken strings. A credo sealed up its spiritual sense. Here was a quiet country of fixed mind. Here life no more was all, nor passion's voice. The cry of sense had sunk into a hush. Soul was not there, nor spirit, but mind alone. Mind claimed to be the spirit and the soul. The spirit saw itself as form of mind, lost itself in the glory of the thought, a light that made invisible the sun. Into a firm and settled space she came, where all was still and all things kept their place. Each found what it had sought and knew its aim. All had a final, last stability. There one stood forth who bore authority on an important brow, and held a rod. Command was incarnate in his gesture and tone. Tradition's petrified wisdom carved his speech. His sentences savoured the oracle. Traveller or pilgrim of the inner world, fortunate art thou to reach our brilliant air, flaming with thought's supreme finality. O aspirant to the perfect way of life, here find it. Rest from search and live at peace. Ours is the home of cosmic certainty. Here is the truth, God's harmony is here. Register thy name in the book of the elite, admitted by the sanction of the few. Adopt thy station of knowledge, thy post in mind. Thy ticket of order draw in life's bureau, and praise thy fate that made thee one of ours. All here, docketed and tied, the mind can know, all schemed by law that God permits to life. This is the end, and there is no beyond. Here is the safety of the ultimate wall. Here is the clarity of the sword of light. Here is the victory of a single truth. Here burns the diamond of flawless bliss, a favorite of heaven and nature live. But to the too satisfied and confident sage, Savitri replied, casting into his world sight's deep release, the heart's questioning inner voice. For here the heart spoke not, only clear daylight of intellect reigned here, limiting, cold, precise. Happy are they who in this chaos of things, this coming and going of the feet of time, can find the single truth, the eternal law. Untouched they live by hope and doubt and fear. Happy are men anchored on fixed belief in this uncertain and ambiguous world, or who have planted in the heart's rich soil one small grain of spiritual certitude. Happiest who stand on faith as on a rock. But I must pass, leaving the ended search, truth's rounded outcome, firm, immutable, and this harmonic building of world fact, this ordered knowledge of apparent things. Here I can stay not, for I seek my soul.